I can't get enough. If you ever see Denzel Washington live, with all the charisma, composure, and wisdom as you would expect from Denzel Washington.
I said, this guy's Irish, right? And the casting director said, no, Southside Chicago Irish. And I freaked out. Like the blood drained from my body.
We squish 15 people in this elevator. He goes, oops, I'm coming in. Jumps into the elevator. The elevator goes up 2 floors and then comes flying back down to the lobby. All right. Welcome to the Actor's Guide to the End of the World, episode 5, where we talk about acting in Hollywood in a way people understand. I'm your host, Econ Song. This is Rian Sheehy Kelly. What's up, buddy? Fresh over on the other side of the pond. On the show for today, it's award season. We're talking about free movies for SAG actors. We saw a bunch recently. We're also going to share some stories about why networking events are tricky for actors.
How do you network in a room of 700 actors?
And also, what makes a movie star a movie star?
Is there a defining characteristic of a star?
And as always, follow us wherever you find your podcasts, The Actor's Guide to the End of the World, and follow us on all social media at Actor's Guide Podcast.
And now a word from our sponsor for today's episode. Does your pet get the yips in auditions? Does your little friend literally shit the bed at callbacks?
Welcome to the Royal Academy for Dramatic Barks, where your puppies will be trained by acting legends Ellen Barkin,
Mark Ruffalo,
and Sir Patrick Stewart. Sign up today. Today is going to be a jam-packed, a lighter episode, a little more movie-friendly, fun, and giggles and everything. It's essentially award season for a lot of the entertainment industry. And so for SAG actors and those that might not know, here in LA and over in New York especially, they have a lot of screenings trying to get people to see these new movies.
And I'm also, this year, I'm on the SAG Awards nominating committee. Because I'm in Ireland working, I can't go to any of them, and I feel terrible because I feel like I've missed a lot of cool screenings.
100% during the season, I overload myself. I went to so many screenings this past week. I'm straight up dizzy. I'm not even exaggerating. Just to give you an idea of the things that I saw in the past week. The Substance, people are raving about it. I saw The Substance with Demi Moore speaking, The Room Next Door with Tilda Swinton and Julianne Moore, and Pedro Almodovar. I saw Honora with Sean Baker, Mikey Madsen. I saw Matlock with Kathy Bates. I saw Maria with Angelina Jolie there. Unstoppable with Don Cheadle, J-Lo. I saw Baby Reindeer with all the creators and the stars. This is the past 2 weeks.
Dude, did you? So when you say, with all of that, they all did Q&As?
Yeah.
My good God.
And the thing is I just want people to understand this. These are benefits that we get as SAG members. And I know a lot of actors who don't take advantage of this.
I would say the majority don't take advantage of it.
The top movies of the year, they usually have Q&As with the stars and the directors. You get to hear this inside perspective that no one gets to hear. And on top of it, they give you a guest. That's $40. I am a child of Chinese immigrant parents. We just need to understand that, okay? I have a certain mentality of this. It just, I just can't get myself to not take advantage of something that's been offered, expensive as an actor. Can barely afford rent. We're in debt. And you can't afford the shoes that you bought. And they're giving you 2 free movie tickets. I'm just saying, if you're dying for a night out.
Which is a very interesting snapshot of LA, is where you can't afford rent and you're barely getting by. But you can hear Angelina Jolie answer questions about her latest movie for free.
I don't want to be the Chinese grandpa here, but I'm just saying, it just makes perfect sense. I don't know why people don't take advantage of this.
We're not all like
crazy
Screen Can Sung over there. Dude, I just want to say, for everybody that doesn't know, Econ is also, one of his many interests is food blogging, which I think is fantastic. I went with Econ to a food festival in Culver City, and I ate my mind off. It was just, I couldn't have eaten more. Like, I didn't eat all day beforehand, and the food was astronomical, and I just, it was outstanding.
Yeah, so I like to enjoy myself.
That's the way to live.
I gotta say this story. As far as, I don't want to paint this picture, but it is very interesting when you get this collection of interesting, artful, creative types. You see characters all across the board. Anyway, so this past week, I was at the SAG building, and we're going up to there's a whole new screening room at the SAG building. It's beautiful for these screenings. And we're all going up to the penthouse level. We all have to go through these elevators. And the amazing thing is the SAG building, the elevators are always broke. They've been being renovated for the past 8 years. And so we squish 15 people in this elevator.
Terrifying.
One of the actors, this big heavyset man, sees 15 people are in the elevator, and he goes, "Hey, you guys have room for a 300-pound man in there?" Right? And we're like, "Ha ha ha ha." And we're like, "Nope. See ya." The guy proceeds to run into the elevator. He's like, "Oops, well, I'm coming in anyway." Jumps into the elevator. The elevator goes up 2 floors and then comes flying back down to the lobby. Okay. We literally slam back to the lobby. In those 2 floors of going up and going down, he proceeds, because we're squished together. One woman is kind of elbowing and pushing him out of the way, and they're literally having a fight while we're flying in free fall. He goes, "Excuse me, ma'am, can you not put your hands on me?" They are literally having a fight in this elevator. 16 people are plummeting, and we're all like, "Oh my God, is this really
Dude, that's
happening?"
Terrifying.
We slam down to the lobby. I'm like, I'm taking the stairs. I thank God the door opened. I bum rush out, take the stairs. I'm like, I'm getting out of there. Me and a few other actors were flooding out. That happened.
Oh my God.
That being said, you all should be going to these screenings. This is a bad advertisement. But SAG needs to fix those elevators, and I love actors. So anyway, these SAG screenings, there are some actors, literally as soon as the lights go up, they are bum rushing the stage trying to get Tilda Swinton's autograph.
What do you think that is? What do you think that is? What's the, like, this thing about proximity to fame? It's a very powerful draw for people. And I know in one way I understand it. It's admiration. It's, actually just on that, in Ireland, it's slightly different in that, like, Irish people sort of take pride in ignoring famous people, which is very interesting. Like, there'll be someone in town and people love just not giving them any attention. I was talking to a friend of mine who recently worked with a big movie star, and he was having a drink on his own in a pub, and my friend walked by because he'd just worked with him. They were working together, and he didn't bother him because he thought he just wanted to be left alone. And then they were talking like the next week, and he's like, "I saw you in the pub," and he's like, "Why didn't you come up and talk to me?" He goes, "I thought you want to be left alone." He goes, "No, Ireland's great. Like, people don't bother me, but sometimes I just want to chat to people." You know what I mean? So, like, which I love, which is a lovely thing.
Totally see that, because even on that perspective, LA is kind of like what we talked about a few episodes ago. LA is where you want to be seen.
In what sense?
In LA, it's about the glitz and the glamour. It's about the paparazzi. It's about PR. It's about some celebrities show up to restaurants and let the paparazzi know.
Oh, sorry. Yes, of course. Celebrities who want to be in the public eye.
Yeah.
And
even in New York, sometimes you can get by under the radar in New York, and people will just pass by, and maybe you get stopped, maybe you don't. A lot of people like their privacy, even in New York. I think context is a lot. If you bump into Colin Farrell and you're like, oh, you're just sitting at the same pub or restaurant or whatever, and you just have a chat, and we're like, oh yeah, hey, big fan or whatever. If it's something subtle and just like normal people being normal people, I feel like that carries regardless if they're celebrity or not. As opposed to, there is a theater of 1,000 people and you are elbowing people out of the way.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think one thing that I love about Q&As, and just to use Colin Farrell as an example, when I see Colin Farrell in interviews, I love the way he answers questions. He's always so thoughtful and so honest. And I think actually that tells you a lot about an actor, when how they compose themselves in an interview.
You're right. They usually have answered these questions a million times. Can you make it fresh? Can you make it
some of the
interesting?
questions are asinine as well. I understand that too. On a press junket, you hear crazy, like, just really looking for a soundbite.
I completely agree. As an actor, I absorb all of it, where I'm like, this is a great interview. And you're completely right. Are they asking and thoughtfully answering questions in the moment? Tom Hardy comes to mind. Colin Farrell comes to mind. Robert Downey comes to mind. It's a living, breathing conversation, and that's what you hope for, and you hope to. And it's one of a kind. You're there in the moment, and you get to participate in that. One of the screenings that I got to see was Gladiator 2 of Denzel Washington, Paul Mescal, Connie Nielsen, Fred Heckinger, and 3 of the producers of the film after the screening at the Chinese Theater in Hollywood. Small little plug. I actually record these Q&As. I record these Q&As while I'm watching them, and I'm actually putting them on my YouTube.
Brilliant. And he can also sells copies of them out of the back of his car. So just meet him there on La Brea, and he'll...
I also have signed headshots of Tilda Swinton if anyone wants to buy them. Just to bring it back to before. Denzel Washington. He will say whatever he wants. And not in a inflammatory way, but he's so purely Denzel Washington with all the charisma, composure, and wisdom as you would expect from Denzel Washington. I can't get enough. If you ever see Denzel Washington live.
Do you think he earned that, or do you think he was always like that? Do you think, like, if you'd gotten Denzel Washington 20 years ago, would he have been the same?
Denzel Washington has been around for a while. I'm going to go out on a limb saying that from a while ago, and it has a lot to do with the incredible actor that he is. I want to say that he was fairly confident in who he was, and that translates. And I feel like that also translates to a lot of charisma that we see in movie stars and what we're talking about in interviews. This is a human being. Whether he can transform into characters or not, that's great. But this is a human being that can be on a stage and talk and speak articulately and captivate you and maybe tell his stories. But most importantly, you relate to him and can relate to him and hear him. You know, he was a professional. He worked in sanitation.
No,
he worked in sanitation early on in his life. He literally was. I'm going to paraphrase this. He was taking a bus or public transportation to New York for acting, and he was working as a sanitation worker. He literally was working on garbage trucks.
Which, incidentally, was my the first job that I wanted to do as a kid.
Was it really?
That was my ambition. My parents asked me what I wanted to be. I think it was the fact that you did get to go on the back of a truck.
That's awesome.
You got replaced by something, probably by something, ridiculous.
I wanted to talk about Paul Mescal because we had an interesting conversation. You have a friend who worked with Paul Mescal.
Yeah, she worked with him on a show. She said, "Oh, he's going to be a star." And I was like, "Oh, yeah." And she's like, "Yeah, he's going to be a star." She's like, "You can just tell." And then I watched, and the show was Normal People, and I thought he was brilliant. I thought he was brilliant in the show. I really did. But as far as the star thing went, like, I didn't quite see it because I was like, why do you think he's going to be a star? Because I thought he's so good in it and he's such an excellent actor. But like you say, the star thing seems so elusive and esoteric to me that I was like, how do you see that? And also for an Irish actor to go from, like, a show that's very Irish, quintessentially sort of Irish.
I always thought that was essentially the show where I just called it Irish people having sex. I don't want to, generalize it.
And you didn't watch it? What's wrong with you? I will say that I had the pleasure of watching Anya Taylor Joy work once. I did a small part in the movie that she was in, and I got to sort of watch her work. And there was something about her that there was definitely something. She just has that sort of quality where you're like, wow, this person is different. And the movie had a lot of very good actors in it, like really well-established, really good actors. But there was just something different about her. It was a kind of a freedom that she had. She just felt sort of untethered from the same things that kind of hold us down, you know what I mean? Or hold me down, Every take was different. Every take was really brilliant. I don't know.
The one thing I will say is, and I just want to mention this because this is always in the back of my mind, this idea of confirmation bias. What you see is confirming your prior beliefs. Paul Mescal becomes a star. It confirms the moment that we said, hey, I saw Paul Mescal work back in the day and I knew he was going to be a star. Versus all the actors who had star quality when they were in their conservatory and they're in their high school, they became nothing. Don't talk about the stars who never made it. And also, I want to add this idea that you can be a star, but never find the proper role to get you to stardom. And that's out of our control. And that's the Hollywood gods. And that's also a lot of luck.
To your point, someone can be a star for a while and then not anymore and fade out. You know what I mean?
I agree. You need the role to shine. This is still one of those things. You got to be in a good film. You got to be in a film that pops. And also, you kind of have to be in a film that makes money. There's so many other factors that could, quote unquote, make someone a star. In my mind, a certain charisma, a certain thing that can light up a actual movie theater screen, which is kind of gigantic.
Like this, to go back to our earlier conversation about the nature of fame changing, the democratization of fame. There aren't as many untouchable movie stars as there once were. Because we get to see, I don't know, everybody feels a bit more accessible, you know?
I could probably go on Twitter and find out where Leo DiCaprio is right now. You know what I mean? And it's just like, it's just a different world.
Just want to add as well, just that thing about actors at these things, because I went to a casting talk this past week, put on by IFTA, which is the Irish Film and Television Academy.
Oh, nice.
It was a panel of casting directors, moderated by a director, and a panel of actors moderated by a casting director. And it was really interesting. It was a really interesting talk. I got a great perspective on casting from, like, these are the top casting directors in Ireland. Delighted to have seen it. But then when I came out, it's by its nature, it's an event with a lot of actors and a lot of casting directors. And it's a very intense environment with a lot of actors approaching casting directors as they're coming out, you know. And there was like a free bar in the cinema, and it's nobody's fault. It's just a very intense kind of environment. So it's interesting to see that, and it might be part of the going up to a famous person thing, but this is even more of a professional thing, because everybody's looking for their break. Everybody's looking for their shot. But, you know, you've a lot of people approaching casting directors one after another, and they can only, you know, talk to people for a few seconds at a time.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up, because I definitely have thoughts about that, because there was actually one of those in LA just this past week. I did not go. I have a friend that went, but I want to talk about just that whole mentality, because I think a lot of actors and even non-actors would be interested to hear this. Actually, you know, on that note, was there anything from the panels that you thought, hey, I need to remember, and it might be just affirmation or confirmation of things that you already knew?
You know, it just sort of reaffirmed for me what you hear a lot and know, but, you know, don't always feel, is that casting is so much on your side. They want you to be great. Like, it takes a lot of the pressure off. Like, I remember I went in for one of my first American TV auditions was for a show called The Chicago Code, which lasted one season, which was actually a really good show.
Yeah, I remember that show.
Yeah, and funny enough, I got to know, you know, the showrunner, the creator, that is a friend of mine now. Randomly, you know, years later, through different circumstances. But I went in for it, and I just, you know, the character I thought was Irish, the character I was going in for, because it was listed as Irish. The mistake I made was that it was Southside Chicago Irish, and in the audition room, you know, I said, this guy's Irish, right? And the casting director said, no, Southside Chicago Irish. And I freaked out. Like the blood drained from my body. And I kind of just sort of blacked out.
Wait, real quick. When you say Irish, you meant Irish accent from Ireland versus...
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. It was not that. You know, and so I did this audition. And in my head, it went terribly. I'm sure it didn't go great because I was so kind of nervous then. But I came out of that thinking, oh my God, she hates me. That casting director hates me. She didn't at all. You know what I mean? Like, I went back to, I was a reader for her then subsequently, and then she cast me in another show down the line. She actually cast me in my first American network TV show. I was listening to one of the actors talk, and she was brilliant. Like, she had a real great energy about her, but she talked about one of the roles that she booked. She thought, I'm never going to get this. I'll just treat it as an acting exercise. And she did a tape and sent it off. And then they loved the tape. And then they wanted to see her again. And, you know, again, she thought, well, I'm never getting this. So she kind of just enjoyed it. And That's what it is. Like, it's imagination. It's play. It's imagination. One of the other things I heard as well, which I think is quite valuable advice, is the director in the panel was talking about actors sort of being free to take notes and to be malleable, and the key to that is to be over prepared. Where it seems like that's sort of paradoxical, where if you're not fully, if you just keep it loose, well, then you'll be easier. It's easier for you to move. It's easier for you to change and take direction. But in fact, the opposite seems to be true, where like the more prepared you are, then the more free you are. And I see that time and time again. Like, I watch a lot of interviews with actors online, and on Instagram Reels, I see these little snippets of actors talking. I love that, because you get these, like, you just get different people's perspectives. And I'm firmly of the opinion that there is no one right way to do this.
One quick thing about that, I completely agree. This idea of over preparation, I feel like, we have an idea of it at Leslie's, which is nice because we have a sense of structure, and it works for some people. I would say it works for myself. This idea of over preparation, I think the questions and where the confusion sometimes becomes is what are actors actually preparing? Are they overly preparing their lines? And then that could be a steep decline to just middle of the road, mediocre, and just kind of what everyone else is doing, versus kind of like what you're saying. What are they preparing? What are they filling it up? But I completely agree, because I think most people want to be free, but what they're doing is a lot of them put too much weight on the lines.
Yeah, that made absolute sense to me anyway. I don't know if it makes sense to people like non-industry people, but one thing that one of the many things that I got from working with Leslie Kahn and from being in class there was not to make decisions too early. Like, I would look at a script in the past and I would go, oh, it's this, because it would appear to be this on first glance. And it's rarely that, you know what I mean? And if it is that in and of itself is too broad. And that's like, to your point of, it's too general, it's too broad. It's not something that, it's not interesting. And that's something that Leslie really sort of instilled in me, is the idea of how much of a craft this is as well. Now I have a sort of a roadmap where I get a script. I know where to start. I know how to sort of build it from there. I get such a buzz out of rehearsing with other actors. It's changed my whole experience of acting. And it's that thing of being more prepared than I ever was, but also kind of more free than I ever was too.
I completely echo that. And it reminds me of another gem. There's this old adage, and I'm paraphrasing here. Your first 30 ideas are trash. This is not, as an actor, this is not looking at a script saying, hey, this line is this and this is this. Your first 30 ideas, and 30 is a rough benchmark, but you can look at it a couple ways. Your first 30 ideas are trash. Once you get past those 30 ideas, that's the gold. Or you could say your 30th idea is going to be better than your first one. However you want to phrase it, that's kind of like what we're talking about as far as in the rehearsal process or in the craft of breaking down the script, or, diving into your character of what a character's really thinking in that genre and given circumstances. That's what we're talking about, where maybe go a little deeper. You could maybe get a little more specific and not get lumped in with what everyone else is doing.
Yeah,
just reading,
specificity is key. I will say though, however, regarding self-tapes, my 30th take of a self-tape is rarely the best one. At that point, I'm just banging my head against the wall trying to get it right. And that's never a great place to be.
That's a great distinction. So real quick, let's jump back into this whole networking panel thing, because I think it's a great thing to jump in here, because this is award season. It's holiday party season. This is one of those things, and I admit for myself, as social, I'm fairly social as I am, Those type of scenarios and those type of experiences, I agree, incredibly overwhelming. If I had a choice, I would avoid. Here's how I look at it. These industry mixers, when you have an actor and casting director, the dynamic shifts. It's actors all mingling because they all appreciated, George Clooney after a movie. There's a power dynamic in that room. And actors are looking at casting directors as gatekeepers or someone who can help get them a job. If I start looking at you and talking to you as like, oh, well, you can get me a job. You can get me a job. And you see in their eyes is like, oh yeah, well, you can get me a job. If that's filtering through your entire conversation, that's uncomfortable for a lot of people. But ultimately, you want to be a normal human being having a conversation. I'm a capable, smart individual who's not weird to be around. You might want to hire me for your company. Those things, there was one last week, IMDb Pro was literally throwing a free panel of great casting directors. Last week, it sold out. There was a wait list for actors. It was free to go to. And there was a mixture with these casting directors afterwards. And I'm not going to lie. First of all, it was like in the middle of the day. I was like, I'm not driving to Culver City in the middle of the day. I also chose to go to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. My friend went, and here's what I think is the first kind of tip. He went in knowing with experience, one of those casting directors hired him before. Literally hired him before. He never met them because it was through a self-tape. And so going into that experience, he had a loaded gun because I'm not a fawning actor begging you to hire me or even give me an audition. I'm a peer. You hired me and I would like to say hello. That's the kind of ammunition that I feel like would help a lot of actors, including myself, if I was in that situation, to go into these situations and not feel like a weak, powerless actor. And that's the first thing on my mind. And I think us actors, we need to be in those situations, myself included, and feel that environment and own own yourself and own your presence to be like, I'm just a normal person. We'll have a conversation and
yeah, absolutely. Because I think that applies. I mean, desperation is not an attractive quality in anybody, in any walk of life. Desperation is not, people don't respond well to that. And also, going in looking for something from somebody is a terrible place to be. And, and I think you can sort of sum it up by like, don't be a dickhead. Just go, bring something. A pal of mine who works, he's an actor, works a lot, and was just doing an Apple TV show there, has a really cool way of working. He, first of all, he brings gifts for people just because he loves, not because he wants something from them. Like he brought gifts to set on this show, like every time he showed up, and he's like a recurring guest. So he'd be here and he'd do a week and then he'd come back but he would just bring gifts for people because he likes seeing people respond to that. It wasn't like he was looking for anything. And I've actually used that. I've used that, which is brilliant. I think it's such a brilliant thing. Bring something to the table. Don't go there just looking for something, just don't be a dickhead.
I think it comes with experience, and you're completely right. Don't be a dickhead is actually harder than it sounds. Yeah. I hate to admit this, but I mean, here's the thing. It's like, I don't know how big that panel was at IMDb Pro, right? And I don't know what the makeup of it was, but I can just imagine because I've been to like a lot of these screenings. You see these people, there's a mob mentality and there's an energy in the room. There's 700 actors and there's an energy here. You try to be professional. There is a question that you might be lumped in with the others. And I'm not saying that you have to make a distinction. I'm just saying that it's harder than it seems when there's energy in the room of people fawning and tripping over themselves.
Yeah. And here's the other thing about these events. Nobody's really getting a job at these events. You know what I mean? That's not when you're going to make a huge impression on somebody. You can be nice and say hello. If they're a casting director, they're meeting so many people there. You're still not going to make a massive impression, but that's no reason to not be nice. Just be cool. And I think what underpins that a lot of times for people, that idea of like, I have to get something, is the thought of everything is riding on this. And that can apply to any audition where you're like, oh my God, it's all about this job. Everything's riding on this. Everything's riding on this audition. Everything's riding on this meeting. Like, the truth of that is, it is never the case.
The end all be all. That's a great point. I completely agree. It comes with experience and remembering that this is not your one shot.
No,
the
my
one
God.
shot of
Yeah.
panel with 800 other people running around. I would just echo on top. It's just understanding that this is a community, even more so after the strikes and after pandemic, where we rarely see each other with self-tapes. This is a community. Respect the community, and we're all in it together trying to help and collaborate with each other.
Everybody's just doing their best. Everybody's just out there doing their best, trying to do what they can.
This is a general reminder for, including myself, the importance of speaking to strangers. Put yourself in these uncomfortable situations and being a human being, having conversations.
Absolutely. If you're on a bus or a train, you're in the street, grab somebody by the lapels if they have them and just go, we are having a conversation, and practice. Practice. Don't let them away until you're fully practiced. The other thing that just struck me about this before we wrap this up, because I know we've talked about it for a while, is you have to be really good at the job too, And I think a lot of actors forget that, because I've seen actors who, instead of working on the craft of acting and getting to be as, absolutely as good as they can possibly be, I've seen a lot of actors think that it's some kind of magic bullet. They just need to market themselves better. They just need to do this. They just need to get these headshots. And it's all of these other things around it. But people forget, at the core of this, you absolutely have to be as good as possible at this thing, because that's the job. So that when you do get the chance, okay, you're ready. I don't want to sound preachy at all. Like, I'm not preaching. I've been on all sides of this thing. You know what I mean? Where I've been.
It's when people say it's all in who you know. There is truth to that phrase, but it's because people keep saying that and people keep believing it. It's all in who you know and how you network, as opposed to it's all about your craft and how good of an actor you are. And that's why it's because people keep saying things like that. There's truth to that. Like, I feel like in this day and age in our industry, unfortunately, we kind of have to do more than what they had to do, what actors had to do 15 years ago. We kind of have to understand marketing a little bit. We kind of have to do social media and PR a teeny bit. We have to understand it. We have to be findable in the digital world. That being said, are you going to overweight and completely ignore your craft?
And I will say that it's all about who you know is misconstrued often as well, because I'm sure Steven Spielberg has a load of mates who aren't in his movies. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just that. It's not just, oh, they know someone. So why do you know that person? How did they get to know that person? Are they good at what they do? Do they, do people like working with them?
And that's also one of those things where actors, the more that they go to these panels, the more they understand that actors is such a small piece of the collaboration that they can't go like, and I find myself in this. I was like, why did I not go out for this show? And how did I? And so, of course, they hired all their friends. When we hear all the behind the scenes of, the director talks about, I saw this in this performance, without hearing the backstory, actors can easily fall into be like, well, my agent sucks. I have no talent. All these other things that we don't understand. And we just,
we don't get to know that most of the time. And also there's an X factor where sometimes it's very hard for directors to explain, or casting directors to explain, why this person just works when another person doesn't. But all you can control is your own reaction, and how you approach it.
I think that's a great place to pin it. Yeah. This hidden gem will be coming off the top of Rian's dome. Hidden gems for this week. Mine is Geeky Teas and Games in Burbank. It is a whimsical retailer offering board games, geek-inspired tea, and it is also a home to a kitty cat rescue. No joke. There are kitty cats ready to be adopted in beautiful Burbank. I have a friend who works there and volunteers helping play with the little kittens to get them acclimated to human contact. And I most likely will be volunteering. I cannot wait. And that is my hidden gem. If you want to play games or teas, you can also stop by and have a ball over there.
Nice hidden gem.
Try to top that. Rian.
Rian forgot to think of a hidden gem this week. So this is going to be right off the top of my head. So my hidden gem for this week is, if you get a piece of brown bread and you put 2 dates on that piece of brown bread and you eat it, it literally tastes like a cake. I discovered this the other day. If you cut 2 dates in half, spread them along the top of a piece of brown bread, and by brown bread, I mean like Irish soda bread, it's like eating cake.
Wow.
So for somebody who wants to eat cake and, but doesn't want to eat cake, there you go. Cut up some dates and put them on brown bread. That's my hidden gem for the week. Yeah,
dude, I think that's great. I think that's great. That is a hidden gem. I want to know these little tricks. All right. Awesome. Beautiful. That's our show this week. Thanks for listening, everyone.
See you next time.
And see you next time. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like what you saw, maybe give a like, maybe subscribe. It helps people find the podcast. Also, if you didn't catch last week's episode, it's right over here. Don't worry. We'll wait.